All right, so Junior, setting the pace for this discussion. Well, let's get it underway then. The Electoral Commission of South Africa saying it's all systems go for this weekend's voter registration drive. So, are South Africans ready though, particularly young people? To answer that question, we're joined by the president of Not In My Name, and that's Siya Jentile. He is on my left-hand side. I need to get my directions correct here. And then, in between these two gentlemen, we have Ursula Botha, and she is an actress. She also is an activist, including an academic. Good to have you here. We also have Dr Khulani Sikhosana. He is the founder of a magazine, an online magazine. It's called Vuka Darkie. This is basically a magazine whose interest is on township development. I hope I have summed that up very nicely, sir.
Yes.
All right. Good morning to you all, and thank you very much for your time. I'm going to start on my left and go around the table. A similar question to all of you, and that is, are you a registered voter, Siya? But add to that, what issues interest you, and is it pretty much obvious, given that you are the president of Not In My Name? We know your organization comes out every time we have that unfortunate incident in our country, or the many unfortunate incidents where there is violence directed towards women.
Yeah. Just for clarity, is what ready? Am I ready for what?
Are you a registered voter?
Oh yes, no, I am registered.
Yeah.
I'm registered. I'm excited about the upcoming elections, and I would like to encourage other young people to actually go out this weekend. Those who have not registered to do so. And for me, one of the most things that I'm looking forward to in the upcoming elections, there needs to be a concerted effort to ensure that the structural and systematic challenges that are faced by young people, which is one of the main reasons why there is this so-called apathy amongst young people, is that those things should be addressed.
Yeah.
I also believe that the responsibility to educate young people and the general South African public on the importance of registration and ultimately voting should not be left to political parties alone,
yeah.
For obvious reasons. And so that means organizations such as the one that I work for and other members of the civil society should partner with the Electoral Commission as well as government and other stakeholders to make sure that we get maximum participation, especially from young people. So there's many issues which I think can be, many wrongs which I believe can be rectified in these upcoming elections. Also in the IEC, I hope we'll get to talk about that later, yeah, as well. Yeah, but for me, those would be some of my opening reflections.
Okay. Ursula, let's come to you. Are you a registered voter? But add to that, what do you think are the issues that need to stand out for you in this upcoming election?
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Yes, I'm a registered voter. I feel very passionate about having a voice and having a voice in your country. And this is how you give yourself a voice, right?
Exactly.
And what are my concerns are, first of all, before we even get to the future of the country and the future of opportunity for the youth is a big concern for me. I'm concerned that the youth aren't always, they're seeing this as an event and not as a consequence. And what are we setting ourselves up for? Yeah. And when we don't give ourselves that voice of our future, then we're actually giving over the power to the older generation. The older generation understand democracy and they are extremely passionate when you listen to them speak about this. Yeah. And with the youth not knowing enough and not making a decision, they're handing it over to the older generation who's thinking about their retirement. But here it's a scary place if you don't have opportunities and you don't have security. And so I think that's a big concern for me in South Africa is what is our security, what is our stability, everything's unpredictable.
Khulani, let's come to you. Okay. You're a registered voter, and what issues should stand out for you in this upcoming election?
Okay, I'm not a registered voter, by virtue of the fact that I don't believe that we can get our freedom through a ballot paper. There's nowhere in history whereby us as Africans, we have got our freedom through a ballot paper. I believe that power lies in the economics. So even our politicians, we all know that they are captured, understand? So me, my primary focus is to add value on the economy of the of Africans, especially local, in terms of enhancing the GDP through my businesses, through creating access to market through my platforms. Yeah. So that's where I believe that through having economic power, I can influence a politician, and so that they can maybe create policies that are geared towards adding value to my community. I think economic power makes us to have the power to make the decisions, you understand? Because even when you look at the fiscal and the monetary policies of South Africa, who controls them, who dictates them? Because you find that most of the politicians are remotely controlled. They are just managers of white wealth. So I believe that as a people, we should come together and capture the likes of Julius Malema so that they can create policies that will advance for us. So I believe that I need to gain economic power so that I can control and dictate as a collective.
That's a very, very interesting view, and I'm not going to leave it to myself to try and understand and unpack it further. That's why you guys are here, Siya and Ursula. Let's start with you, Siya. Do you believe that Khulani is or has his finger on the pulse in terms of politicians being captured, because these are people that have shown themselves to be influenced in the main by business interests? I think I'm capturing the essence of what you are saying, and therefore, for him though, voting is not important. What's important is capturing politicians so that they can deliver on his interests. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well,
it's a controversial one.
It's a very controversial one in a sense that there are many ways in which you can acquire political power.
Yeah.
And one of the ways in which to acquire political power is to have influence. And in order for you to have influence, you've got to have the economic power. You've got to have the economic muscle. And that is why you see, if you check all these political parties that are running, they are obviously going to champion the interest of their funders. That's just politics. And so it's well and good for him to, want to achieve economic power so that he can capture politics. I think the vehicle is good, but the intention, in my own opinion, because how many ordinary South Africans can then want to? I think economic emancipation should be driven by the total emancipation of the collective. Right. To say that we want to be economically independent as a people, not so that we can control politicians, but so that we can have power to self-determine. And so for me, while I agree with him that we should all strive towards economic emancipation, we should be aware of the collective, which may not be able or may not necessarily have the means to achieve the economical means to capture politicians. I think politicians are already captured. And in fact, all of us to a certain degree, whoever pays you, you have to, advance that person's interest. Newzroom pays you to sit here now and do what you are doing. So I don't want to. He must tell us what it means exactly. He must tell us what it means exactly. But for me, Toli, so quickly before you move, for me, one of the most important things, especially as we are going into the registration weekend, is that it is important that we emphasize the need to go out and register, especially amongst the young people. Staying away is actually the main reason why we are in the state of junk that we are in South Africa. So we are not solving anything by staying away from voting. So young people must register.
Ursula, part of the reason why I'm not so sure that Khulani's point is the right one, at least in my analysis of it, is partly because we now have a law in South Africa that regulates the funding, the sources of donations to political parties. It's the Political Party Funding Act. And so that regulates that immediately you get, amounts larger than 100,000 rand, you have to declare that, who your funders are, and that then, in a way, almost tells us who your interests are and why perhaps your party advocates for a certain policy direction. Just your thoughts on what he believes. I'm not so sure about not voting, though.
I'm not quite sure I understood the concept. On paper, it can make sense, but it doesn't make sense to me because it's holistic.
Yeah.
So, and in my humble opinion, so I look at maybe the younger generation where things are instant. We look through the lenses of a close-up, where the economy is separate to the government. But we need to look in the wider lens, where it's all linked, and there's so much more information. So perhaps it's not having enough knowledge to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
So I want to add to what Siya was saying is, let's just get registration done. Just give yourself an option. An option, and then we still have a whole year to make your decisions, and a lot can happen as we lead up to voting.
Khulani, that's the difficulty here, and it is that how do you not only influence the politician, but you ensure that they get to the position where you need them to be after you've influenced them. And I think that can only be done through voting. Where I'm confused with your concept, I'm suddenly remembering something that was said by a former Chief Justice who says, he was on the radio saying he believes that he's going to lead this country, but it's not going to be through elected. It's not going to be through him being elected. This is something that is almost an anointance from above. Do you get where the difficulty is with the concept that you are proposing?
The thing is that let's start by defining power. There's a wise African scholar. He teaches us that power is the ability to define reality and to make others to respond to that reality as if it were their own. So now, by virtue of having economic power, I'm not speaking in isolation. I'm speaking even, we all know, with obviously, South Africa is owned by Rupert, by the open-aimers. Those are the people who dictate the policies as to the direction so that it can advance their ends. So now, by virtue, and I'm not speaking as an individual, I speak as a collective that us as Africans, we need to come together and capture certain politicians so that they can create, for example, policies that are geared towards redressing the previous injustices. Because the policies, as we see today, you see about affirmative actions, they are inclusive of even, say, white women and other so-called previously marginalized groups. And we were not in equal footing in terms of previous, in terms of oppression. So it is us who were at the receiving end of economic marginalization. So we need to create pro-African policies, not just policies that are inclusive, because we are trying to solve a problem. Right? So now with us, we're trying to solve a problem by just giving us that illusion of inclusion. You understand? So I believe it's the power dynamic. So by virtue of having economic power, I can say create a policy for black entrepreneurs. You understand? Because even if you can see, me, I'm an entrepreneur myself. You understand? I create access to market for black businesses. So I've seen that the policies are anti-black. You understand? They can say policies are good on paper, and also you alluded that there are certain, they've drafted the policies that they need to publish the funders and whatnot. But you know that South Africa is corrupt. Some, they will fund Madala side, you understand? So let's understand we are operating in a very corrupt environment.
You know, Khulani, the many statements that you have made, it's important for me, though, and it's part of the responsibility that I carry as as a news anchor, to make sure that there are corrections, but also ensure that we do not lose each other in the process. It's important that we state for a fact that the Rupert family, the Oppenheimer family, they don't own South Africa. We shouldn't...
They control it.
We shouldn't be making statements like that, because up until there is that, or that is proven, only then can we say such things with emphasis, you know. And so it's important for us to stay away, I think, from people's names, because that could get us into trouble. Nonetheless, let's push ahead with the conversation around the many intractable issues, Siya, that we have seen in this country. And I was particularly keen on you being present here, because we know today, as declared by President Ramaphosa, that the #1 pandemic after COVID-19 is gender-based violence and femicide. How important an election issue do you think that should be in determining for people who is going to bring about solutions? The current government, they have done what they think is appropriate, but is it moving the needle? Is it preventing this scourge from furthering?
Yeah. Look, the issue of GBV is a very contentious one, as you know. And going into these elections, again, it's important that young people vote. And one of the reasons why most young people stay away or abstain from voting is primarily because there's ageism and sexism in politics. Our politics, and you always have them here, you're always having old men. Those are the men who are dominating our politics. And so the discussion around gender-based violence to those kind of people may not necessarily resonate with them in as much as it would resonate with a female politician, for an example. And so it's important for us to interrogate these manifestos of different political parties and check their leadership structures to say that Party X, if you are saying you are going to deal with GBV, whereas in your very own leadership structures you don't have females, you don't have young people. And so how are you going to deal with GBVs when you don't have people who understand, who've got lived experiences of the subjugation of women in this country? And so we need to also check things like we are getting towards 16 days of activism towards women and children.
For no violence against women and children.
And you've got a government that is coming out. I don't know what these people are smoking. They're coming out and then they want to then say that they are introducing or launching taverns of the future, whereas alcohol is the #1 contributor, or there's a direct correlation between alcohol and GBV in the country. And so those are some of the things that should turn us off as voters, as the electorate, to say that we are trying to address GBV, at the same time you're trying to make taverns attractive to drinkers, and in a country where we have history of violent masculinities as well. And so for me, these elections are very important, and I'd like to appeal to my brother here, Khulani, to say, for now, as you are saying, just register, and then let's think about ways in which we can influence the change that we want. But I also want to throw a spanner there, Khulani, and say that you know that those who control the means of production, they control the state. Those who are, you know, when you wake up, you know who owns the toothbrush you used, the Colgate, everything. The products you're using every day. You know where they come from. And
guys, I am so upset that time is completely run out. But I have to ask you the question, Ursula, about corruption. Khulani makes it an affirmative view that we know South Africa is corrupt. But we know also that individuals are corrupt, and it is them who affect the very social fabric of the country through their corrupt means. How do we address corruption?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I wish I had that answer. But we can only start with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's not about being naive. And I want to be the eternal optimist. And I am the eternal optimist. I live in South Africa by choice. Yeah. I am here by choice. I'm not running away. So I want to be here. But you got to be awake and you got to be aware about corruption. And then we've got to play our part.
Indeed. And part of the awareness perhaps starts with you and me not wanting to bribe that police officer when we had a sip or two of our favorite drink and we knew the consequences, what the consequences were going to be. Khulani, unfortunately, time has run out, but this is a conversation that we ought to continue, and that I can promise. Thank you all for making the time. Yes, it was too short, I think. We need to dedicate a whole hour here. Thank you very much to all my guests who made it through today. All right. Well, that's where I end it this week. Happy voter registration weekend. Go out there and get yourselves registered so that you'll be able to vote. Thank you for watching.